Check 1, 2. Yep, mine's working.
Check.
You have to do a screen.
The different styles of check 1, 2.
Something to scream about.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Something to Scream About, episode 27.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because that says episode 26, and that's the last one that we did. So we're episode 27. Couple of new things that we can point out if you're watching the high definition video on Spotify and YouTube, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Hopefully if you're not driving.
Yeah, actually, if you're driving, pull over. Because this is important. We have a new sign. Woo! That just like lights up and stuff. And I literally dropped it off the table before and broke it.
And then I was like, we didn't even get to use it.
But so it's
we
here.
use batteries.
Yeah, it's rectified. If the batteries go out halfway through the episode, then we know that it's really terrible. But it's a exciting new little gimmick for the show. Second thing is that we actually have the same microphone now.
Yes, finally, no more bleeding into 3 different USB mics.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I think I wanted to use this opportunity to talk a little bit about why this mic is so good. Because there's some people that have never heard of these before, and I've found myself actually...
Really?
Yeah.
No one's heard of a Shure SM57.
Well, some people haven't. I know that some people are living under a rock, but I was having to describe this the other day as to what kind of microphone it is and why it's useful and why I choose this one. So... obviously, we have the differences in dynamic versus condenser microphones. This is a dynamic microphone, for those who don't know, and dynamic means, Cam?
I don't fucking know. It just and scream.
No, the dynamic, basically, my understanding of it is that you have a certain range in which the microphone picks up. This particular microphone can pick up really, really loud sounds that are coming in really, really hot. So like a snare drum is a good dynamic microphone instance because it can take like a really loud sound and still
I've always liked these mics because they have shit tons of headroom.
Yeah.
So like that's why it's good for screaming because you can just, you don't need a preamp or anything.
Yeah.
Actually, if you're doing potties, a lot of the time you need a preamp. You don't need it, but they're good because they boost the gain so much. Otherwise, with the audio interfaces, you got to be like turn it all the way up just to get like any gain. So yeah, that's pretty much as far as
well, that's right. So obviously, loud sounds, so screaming, snare drums, things like that, where you don't want to hear anything else around the sound. So
and then I would say bleed.
Like bleeding, yeah, like
that's
this.
Why, that's why they're a good podcast mic because people are sitting in close proximity to each other, and being that it doesn't pick up a lot of gain around. Right?
Yeah, it's picking up, the loudest thing that's coming into it as close, and then everything else behind it is not being picked up because that noise floor is so far away. Whereas,
and it gives them more dynamics.
Dynamics. It's got such a big range. And then obviously condenser microphone condenses the whole bloody thing into a smaller thing, so you hear everything from the little clicks of your lips opening up and fucking
and birds in the background.
Yeah,
I've had some rappers send me some stems to mix and master and produce and
when they're like in their bathroom or something in their kitchen with reverb.
I'm not going to name him, but if he's listening, he knows who he is. he recorded the vocals in his kitchen.
It's a perfect reverb that we don't need.
And he lived in the city in an apartment. I'm going to DDoS him or dox him, whatever. Birds in the background. So
as this is a podcast, we need the bleed reduction for these microphones. So this is why we now have this.
And you, the listeners, have now been educated. You're welcome. Subscribe.
Yeah. Apart from that small little bit of housekeeping about new things, our topic today...
What about band housekeeping? Is there anything to tell them? We got some new members we're trying out. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that is fun because it broadens horizons and possibilities of music and influences. So that's really exciting, and hopefully you'll hear some new music very soon. Tracks are sounding tight. But yeah, apart from that, our topic today we wanted to chat to you guys about was with visuals. And now Cam's been working quite hard over the last few months, years, whatever it is, on our visual identity to do with music videos and like clips and things like this. So like I thought today would be a really good opportunity to talk through the thought process behind what you're doing, and then also like why we do these things, why we're seeing these types of videos and storylines cropping up with bands, and how much it really impacts your visual identity to have all of these kind of things.
Cool.
So yeah, we'll start with
how I got into it would be a good one.
Yeah. Why and how?
So where's Ben when you need him for starters? Shout out to Third Eye Visuals, the man. He's definitely someone I look up to in this space. So it's really weird how it started. I obviously, if anyone doesn't know already, I use FL Studio with my production, mixing and mastering and stuff. And they have this little plugin that comes native with FL Studio, and it's a visual plugin. And it's very, very basic, but it's really cool. If you ever see YouTube, especially in the hip hop, like actually EDM does it a lot too, you'll see like a song and it'll just have like little visuals that react to the song. If like the beat's going, you know, the visuals will kind of like flash in time with the beat. 99% of those are done with FL Studio's visualizer.
Right.
Even if they don't use FL Studio for like production, they might use Ableton or Pro Tools. They actually just download FL just for that because you see it everywhere. They all have it, right? So I was like, it started out as I was like, I'll just make one of those. Like for Distorted Users music, I was like, yeah, we'll just chuck something up. But then as I was going through the presets, it started sparking my creativity. And I was like, oh, hang on, there's like this little thing's doing this, and you can add smoke in the background, and I can make the words pop up and then like make them like disappear in the background. And there was all this cropping and moving. And I started just tweaking that part of my brain that like likes to mess around with things and create stuff and da-da-da. And I was like, you know what? I might give this a crack, but in an actual program that does it. So being that I didn't want to dive in too hard straight away because I was brand new to it, I looked for a free program which was called Blender. So it's a free program you can download that is essentially a Jesus Christ, how would I even go into this?
It's a 3D
generation. You can build 3D or 2D like worlds and animations, and you can do anything from animating comic books or actual animating like a cartoon, like a show, to doing one-off still images and creating an entire world and craft. And you start off with a little cube and you can like mold it and turn it into like a rock, and there's all these different tools you can click and shape it, and we can make terrain and blah, 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 blah. So pretty much I just started with that, watching tutorials on YouTube, and then I just went typical ADHD, just went hyper-focused right into it. And then I made a couple little visuals, and then like thinking like, oh, this doesn't look that bad, you know. And then like all the boys' reaction and stuff were like, dude, that is sick.
Yeah.
Like what? Like I'm like, oh, I was just messing around. So, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ways I can go into it. I can go into like all the free assets that come with it. Or
yeah, well, we might go into that in a bit. I think that's like super valuable for people creating their own. I think maybe we'll start with like why it's important to have one, and to be and then your whole idea behind creating this world and this whole distorted views kind of theme. So like all of the visuals are having some sort of relation to each other, and we want to try and tell the story of the music through the visual. So what's your thought pattern when you sit down to go, okay, we've got a song, I need to create either a visual for the clip or a music video style like visuals? Like what are you thinking in that process?
So some just come to me as ideas, kind of like songs where I'll write, let's say, a riff. The riff has no idea. The riff has no direction. I'm just like, I'm hearing something in my head. Very, very same process. Sometimes I'll just like the other day, I made this one where I had this idea and I was like, oh, what if we had like a human DNA like strain, like those little like curvy DNA strands you see in all the movies. And then what if it was spinning and then it just like this, I was just thinking coronavirus and shit and COVID, and it was probably going to get fucking demonetized. Not that we're monetized anyway. It was just like crawling all over the DNA thing, and like it was like just like getting infected as it was spinning, and it was only like a 10-second clip. So some of them just start off like that, where I'm just making a bunch of different ideas,
and then they may be useful later for a song. So but you're still thinking with this grand kind of, like our sort of visual identity that we're
Yes.
working towards is the cyberpunky,
Yep.
futuristic, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
So you're always having that in mind when
Yeah.
you're thinking about like what stuff to use or what kind of ideas.
Yeah, so I pretty much go into it just like open-minded, but then we have a general direction that we stick to because we know where the project is and we know where the project wants to be, and everyone's on the same page. So to make the time valuable and productive, we always keep in mind, you know, the direction. Same with writing a song. I'll write a blues song if I feel like it, but I'm not going to write a blues song for distorted views, right? Because we're not a blues band. So, but pretty much that's how most of them start. But if I'm actually specifically making an idea for a specific song, then I always take in what the lyrics are saying. Because to me, I don't know, being a vocalist, I guess the lyrics mean the most to me out of the whole song.
Yeah, for sure.
Really,
they are telling a literal story.
Yes, yeah. Especially with our stuff, we're not as cryptic with our lyrics. We're quite in your face. You know, this is how it is. This is our opinion. Deal with it, kind of thing. Like, you know,
deal with it.
You either like it or you don't, right?
Deal with it.
You know, we're not like I don't really gravitate towards songs that be really cryptic and they're like, the sky is raining in something, and now I'm floating away. You know, like what are you saying, bro? Like,
true, but I have written lyrics very similar to that. Many times
in our stuff or in EDM?
No, just in other things.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like I don't mind that kind of music. I'll listen to it, but I just mean for distorted views, that's
it's very direct.
That ain't the theme that I'm going for. I'm just telling you, bro, this is what's going on.
Yeah,
aliens.
Yeah, aliens, and look at this.
So, yeah, the visual needs to represent that, and why it's important is because you got lyrical content creates a picture, right? It creates an image. It creates the whole feel of the song, and then the music comes in second, and it backs it all up. And it if you're talking about an aggressive subject and your voice is really aggressive in the section, then the music needs to be aggressive. The music needs to be in your face and punchy, and the mixing even reflects that as well with the type of compression you use and the type of EQing and the type of saturation. Like you break it down to so many fundamental levels on the way up that whatever your intent is for that song needs to be portrayed, right? So obviously we've already talked about that with other stuff. I'm going to keep it mainly to visuals, but that's just a little side talk about it. So with the visuals, that's now the third thing, is that you're now putting an image to all those other steps that you've taken, right? So with the visuals, you want to do, if the lyrics say something cool, you can have the visuals also pop that up through on the page, or you can have different kinds of visuals popping up that represent what the lyrics are saying, and it sets the mood, it sets the tone. You can use the same kind of color palette with everything as well and have everything in the same kind of tone and colors that bounce off each other. And that's just something recently I've started doing, is having the color palette like, instead of just being random, because I was kind of, when I first started, I was kind of just dragging and dropping and creating, right? But now I was like, if I keep to a color palette and I actually like make all the materials the same sort of like same color palette, it really hones in on that theme. Like when we're watching that music video the other day, I was like, I could see the color palette that the director was using.
Yeah, it's almost like a filter, like photo filter or something.
Almost,
video filter, color grading. And it's a good example of that is like what you're talking about before with the different layers, is that you can basically like have a lyric written on a page, right? And someone can read that and then interpret it in so many different ways. When that is then put into music and they're listening into it in the context of music, or you're giving them more context on how that sentence is supposed to feel or be read or heard or whatever. But they can still take it different ways. Then with the third layer of the visuals, you're also giving a whole nother like element of how that you want that to come across. Mm-hmm. And you could take that as far or as little as you want. Like some of the visuals, we've just got a looping, thing that just looks like something. So they're just getting another layer, but it's not full on telling a story where there's like some character running through your thing and then doing something and going about his day, like propaganda.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few different ways in which you can do it, but I thought that's a really good breakdown.
Yeah, looping's definitely one of my favorite ones to do, just because they take the least amount of time, but you can kind of get the most amount of influence out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like even just the one I did, I think we said Welcome to the Game or something on it. No, was that the Billboard?
Yeah. Oh, the Welcome to the Game, I think, was the Billboard thing. The
What was it?
one.
I did another one.
The other one was the Tank from Enough, I think.
Oh no, then the other one was like the bridge with the cat on the top.
Yeah.
But pretty much what I'm thinking about for this band is like we're going for this cyberpunky theme moving forward, because we're throwing in. We've pretty much grabbed our entire sound that we like, right? And we're like, after 5-6 years of doing this, we're like, okay, this is all the things we like to do, right? And instead of trying to sound like other bands and trying to sound modern and trying to throw singing and choruses in, we've experimented with a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't seem to work. We're like, you know what? We like futuristic EDM synth sounds that just sound like a computer wigging out, but it's musical. And we also like intense soundscapes and atmospheric things that make you creepy and eerie and go like, oh, like what's like makes you like kind of pull a face, like what's that, you know? And then we also like chugs, heavy breakdowns, low tunings, and just not necessarily complex playing or technical playing, but playing in a way that it's syncopated and the rhythms are very genty and bouncy, so that because we've tried to teach quite a few people our newer songs that aren't released yet, and everyone that's come in has gone, oh, that's hard to play. Even though it's simple, like the notature or whatever is simple, but all the rhythms we're doing and changes is what makes it, right? So in a company with all of that, the visuals are also representing this new like futuristic but old school. We're pretty much grabbing old school and futuristic and slapping them together. So think of futuristic, cyberpunk, new technology, AI, all of this like, you know, advertising, buy, consume, just thrown at your face with billboards and ads. You can't get it's on every single building, everywhere you go. But then combined with slums, underground graffiti, like just like underground heavy metal scene that's in like go through a dark alleyway and in a side door to get there kind of thing. It's just a really cool blending of the two, I think.
Yeah, and the way you described it to me was like creating this world that people sort of can visualize when they think about distorted views. Because one like question that, you know, I think, you know, similar to what we've been asked with some of these things with labels is like like how do you want people to think of your whole brand or your whole visual identity when they first hear your music or first come across you. And like if they don't see a visual, you want the music to sort of already represent this world that you're creating. But if they just see pictures and visuals and the stuff that's going up on your socials, they also want to have that kind of thing. So obviously that's something we're working towards, really getting cohesive between every element, but we're realizing how important it is to ask yourselves these questions, because quite often we're just like, oh, well, I don't, you know, we know what we're all about. But when the first person hears it for the first time, has never met you or never heard any of your music or anything, you want to give them a very accurate representation of your whole idea instantly.
It's so important to have that representation of what you're doing. And that's such a good way to put it, is like, we know what we're about and we know what we want and we know the project, but you got to, if you're marketing yourself as a band or even a solo artist, you have to imagine that when people come and hear your music, if your music gracefully happens to land on someone's newsfeed, then you need to capture as much people as you can, and representing your theme or your what's about you, or your, is it called a bibliography or whatever's on the back of a book? I can't remember.
Yeah, kind of similar. Yeah,
it's blob. Is that what they're called? Blobs or some shit? Anyway.
Yeah, it's blob.
Is that what they're called? You remember when you're a little kid and they go, read the blob on the back, I think bibliography.
Do you mean blurb?
Blurb.
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 Oh my gosh. I don't even know. Now I'm just second. I feel crazy now because you've just... Is it blob?
Well, when you're a little... I don't read much anymore, okay? So, but
because you obviously haven't read many blobs, bro.
I turned into the blob. Look how fat I am. Anyway. Like when you read the back of a book, it's like this book.
It's a summary
and you're like,
of
it. I want to read this book now. So like that's kind of the same kind of thing. Like have like your visuals down to logo. That's why Distorted Views has, we got the logos, and that's not even the same. That's just the logo for the podcast there, you know. But now when you see that, the microphone with the distorted, it's D and a V and an I and the world's in the middle, and it's like really cool, right? So like you see that and you go, oh, distorted views. Or you go, oh, something to scream about podcast. It's this thing that clicks 2 and 2 together in the brain. You know, and then it just helps tie everything together, I guess. Yeah,
so true, bro. Good example, I think, of someone doing this at the moment is Sleep Token, because like everything they're doing revolves around this idea of, you know, going for worship, and, you know, they've obviously got the costumes and all of this that come with it, and they've got their stage names and costumes, and it just has this whole representation. They've got choirs and, like, you know, all sorts. So their whole thing and their tour posters and their photos and all of their socials and their music represents it really cohesively.
And you see it in a lot of their fan base too. The people that throw their music seem to also feel the same kind of way or have the same, like the theme that they're pushing is to a specific demographic of people that go that throw. I keep saying throff. That's an army term, but like they like that stuff, right? So, you know, same kind of thing with our stuff. You know, like I just think cyberpunk stuff is just so cool, right? But I'm kind of, it's so hard that when you want to talk about things you want to talk about, but then you don't want to get like not canceled, but you don't want to like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, we want to say I don't want to be a person that like just
holds back,
has to moderate what I'm saying based on what someone says. Well, so I'll say it in as politically correct way as I can.
Yeah. So like I just mean like, you know, without saying anti-governments necessarily, but we're just anti-manipulation, anti-propaganda, anti-being controlled, anti-being influenced to choose the choices they want you to choose instead of making up the mind for yourself. Whether you're left or right does not matter. This is not a political opinion. This is a mind control opinion. So pretty much I'm anti all of those things mixed in with the futuristic techie kind of things, and you're just seeing we're kind of projecting 1,000 years, or fucking might even be hundreds at this stage by the way technology is going, into the future, and then just saying like, oh, what would it be like in X amount of time if we don't change our opinions on things or the way we think or the way we look at power.
Yeah, exactly. And then you use things to represent that. And I want to bring it back to two things. One is the 3D assets and things that you can use to then create these scenes and elements, and then being able to blend that with real life footage of people playing and then putting people in things in the scene and stuff.
Okay.
And then as an example, a third layer, the video that Ben just made, I can't remember which band it was
Love
for.
You, Benny. Polaris.
Polaris's new song, which is very, very heavily Blender edited and drone footage and all of this sick stuff. So I know we talk about a lot of our guests, like we talk them up and lick their ass a bit.
But he's
you know, we love them, so that's why they're on. But yeah, so go into that sort of stuff and 3D assets and how to do that.
Definitely, I don't think Ben uses Blender. If he does, then Jesus Christ, well done. But he uses, I would assume, Houdini or one of the like really the Adobe ones.
And like, what are these in comparison to Blender? Is it just another version
of
the same thing?
They're all the exact same thing. Just think of it as like FL Studio compared to Pro Tools compared to Ableton. Like, you know, it's just like you're using like, but they all do the same thing. You know, just some are just like Marvel level.
Right. So
like,
for using movies like
for
full on,
they're full on CGI ready to go. They probably got everything into the box, like color grading and stuff. So I use Blender for the 3D world creation, and you can do color grading and stuff in Blender, but I like to do color grading in DaVinci Resolve because I got the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, and geez, man, that they have been upgrading. They used to just be like, it's a pretty good little like video editor. They've like upgraded the crap out of it. There's really good color grading LUTs. There's
what's a LUT?
I don't know what it stands for, but it's like a filter essentially,
right, okay.
And you pretty much it's a pre-based color grading like thing you can drag and drop onto it.
Sorry, I did know that. I'm just throwing that out there for the people that just go, it's gone over their head. It's like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, like, but I use all of that together to create the whole thing. So, in regards to what was the first question?
I was basically like saying
the free assets
and like how you use those and what they are and how to create the scene.
So there's heaps of ones. There's this thing called Quixel Bridge, where they're like real scanned assets in the real world that have been like photo scanned and then made into like a digital 3D version of it, right? So they'll grab like a real brick wall somewhere and take a photo of it with like moss and grass growing on it and the brick texture and the bumpage and whatever, and then they turn into like a 4K or 8K photo essentially, but it's a 3D modeled material.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can grab that material. So I can grab like a square and move it into like what would look like a wall, like a rectangle, and then I can apply this material to it. And then then you can go into like what's called nodes. It's not really point getting into too technical with it, but essentially I can add a bunch of almost like effects to on a chain, like in music production, but in visuals. And then I can put a displacement map on it, and I can just like sort of like put the material and displace it forward, and then you can add lighting into your scene, and then the way the light interacts with that object, you can see the crack, like the little gaps that you have in between every brick layer. The light will sort of shine over that, and it'll make the shadow of the brick kind of pop better. And then you've got this 4K or 8K material from a real brick that you've got from Quixel Bridge for free. And then it looks like a real brick wall. Like it just, and it doesn't take too long to do it.
Yeah, and then you could change that same object to have any kind of material on it, or
water,
use a photo
grass,
or something.
A tree. Sometimes you can just drag and drop trees in, or a car, or the sky, or a cloud, right? And then there's particle creation as well, and like I like to add a lot of atmosphere to our stuff because I like to think with our futuristic thing. I think of like pollution and the environment, and we just haven't given a crap, and we just keep doing like spitting chemicals and crap into the air. So like in all of our visuals, you'll see it's quite dark and quite moody, right? And when you create that atmosphere, what I do is I create a massive cube, like a physical cube in the thing, and I stretch it across the whole entire visual, and then I grab the cube and I replace the volume of it. Instead of having a material like a hard material that you can't see through, I turn that into a volume scatter node, which grabs the volume of it and like scatters it everywhere, and then you can turn down the density of it so it looks like fog.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and then you can change the color of it as well. So if you're doing like let's say if you have a light in the scene and it's like a neon light and it's blue, but you want to put fog in your scene, it wouldn't make sense to have grey fog.
You want the blue fog to match it. You want the
blue fog with the light, so you can grab that little like ink pen thing and then like match the color of it.
That's sick, yeah.
And then I make the fog, but then you put the density really, really low. So you don't. It's not like when you think fog, don't think like heavy fog in a scary movie. It's not like that's dense fog, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very, very light, like 0.0005.
But you have the ability to change that and move it around. And
if I wanted it to be dense, I totally could.
And you can you automate these things? So so it gets foggier and
So there's keyframing, same as automation with music production. That's why I think I'm really good at it, because I'm grabbing all this knowledge.
The same process.
It's all the same. It's just a different way of doing it. So like you can go on frame 1 and then do a keyframe. They're called keyframes, and then you can go on frame 100 and then you can change. You can dial in what you want the numbers to be. You just like, let's say you want it to start in location 0, and by the 100th frame you want it to be in location 5 or something. You type in 5 on frame 100 and then 0 on frame 1, and then as it moves along, it'll go
slowly move.
Just move.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, then you can go into the timeline, go into the node of it, and then you can change if you want it to like quickly get there or if you want it to slowly get to like the bend of the automation.
Oh yeah.
So you can go like really slow, then speed up. You know what I mean? Like,
gosh.
Yeah.
That's so much control. And then obviously like one of my favorite parts about what you're sort of planning to do is the implementation of us either playing within a scene using green screen.
Yeah, dude. Oh, that stuff's so cool. So I'm seeing it to get off DV for a second, I'm seeing it in music videos fucking everywhere, dude. Like everywhere. And I'm like, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. Like every time I see a new music video, I'm like telling Jordan, I'm like, I can do this. And I'm sending him, because it's not necessarily that hard in regards to what you have to do. It's just you have to know the right process of doing it, and you need to get the lighting right is a really big one. Like when you're recording it. So essentially what you're doing is you're kind of faking it out, right? So when you record the actual you guys playing, right? Let's say someone's on the drums or something. You have to know when you're recording that specific take, you have to know where is that drummer going to be in that moment? Is he going to be on the moon? and he's just rotating on the moon for some fucking reason, right? So you're not going to have a bunch of bright lights and you're going to have all of these colors, right? You wouldn't do that. You'd probably have one main light hitting him, and then you have a really strong shadow on one side to represent the dark side of the moon and one the light side of the moon. And then you would record it like that.
So you need to have context of where what you're gonna replace the green screen with. So if I'm sitting playing the drums and then the green screen's behind me and you're sort of doing this, panning shot. You probably don't pan the shots.
You can do panning shots.
Say like front on shot, playing the drums, and then you replace it with the moon background. And then you've got, say, this bright as star in the background that's shining on the side of the moon. You want to then use the same light in the same position in the green screen room to do that.
So pretty much I'm going to match my 3D made up pretend scene with the real film that you actually did. And I pretty much import your video as a transparent, like I make the green screen transparent. I import you in as an image as a plane, and it's a video, so it'll just play in an MP4 or whatever. It'll just loop you, right? And then we match the frame rate of the project with the frame rate of the camera, which is I think is normally 24 frames per second. Or 30 frames per second. Actually, no, an actual camera would be way more than that, wouldn't it?
It depends. I think
it's how you not the camera footage itself will be higher than that, but I think when you bounce it out, you got to match the thing so it looks
frame
correct.
Rate, yeah.
And then you pretty much match. You got to do tracking and stuff, so you can track you have a fake camera like the blender camera, and you have to track the fake camera with what the real camera was doing, and there's a bunch of programs you can do with see all those little like crosses that are all over where it tracks the footage. You can do it in DaVinci Resolve, Adobe, fucking blah blah blah. Like you can do all that, but
that's deep stuff.
Yeah. So you pretty much all I would do is I would just drag and drop an images plane, make it transparent, and then I'll create the environment around you, and then make sure that the lighting that I have in the scene is shining in the same direction as the lighting that's hitting your face in the actual video of where you've recorded. And then I blend it all in, and it literally, you can tell it's a green screen, but it's pretty good. Like, it's pretty good.
From what I've seen, the examples you've showed me, like you can do it really effectively with not very much. Like, you don't need to fuck around too much. You literally can just put the camera in front and then just sort of stand there and play the guitar or sing. And then you don't even have to do any camera tracking. You can just replace the background with
you only need to track if you're doing
something.
Panning shots, or if the person's walking, like going from A to B, because then it'll look real for a second, and then as they get closer, they'll grow really tall or they'll shrink really small, and it ruins the effect. It's like a threshold that you have to be in where it looks legit, and as soon as they break that field of view, it doesn't work anymore. That's why stationary stuff, like you play on the drums, is easy as fuck.
Because it's like it's a 2D video in a 3D space that you're making.
Yes.
So yeah,
but most of them are. If you go watch all these videos, it's quite cheeky how you do it. Like most of them, they're stationary, and the camera might move, but it's not going like this. It's kind of just zooming in slowly, and then they'll use post-production to tweak the camera sideways.
That might even be a post-production thing. That zoom, like that, just slow, like zoom in, could be done afterwards. You just keep both cameras stationary,
and then you add some camera shake or something effect, and and then when you combine, the filming and then the 3D world creation, and then the effects and the stuttering and the color grading, and then any layering, like you can layer multiple like videos over the top of each other and like blend them in, blah 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 blah. You bounce it out, you've got like a whole music video, and you've done it all with free plugins, and the only thing you really need to pay for would be for a friend of yours or someone to just film it, or you could probably film it yourself if you have the gear.
You could,
Which is the whole point of what we do a lot.
I think it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to get stuck into these things. Obviously, you've worked hard putting in the hours to learn these programs, but I feel like with the amount of resources that are on YouTube and things like this, like it's easy enough for people to start if they want to get into a basic version of it. Now, one thing on that Polaris video that Ben made that I noticed was used quite a lot was like masking. And I think that's the correct term for it. I don't know how much you know about it, but I just wanted to make a note of it because it's where, say, for example, you've got the real footage of guys playing. In this instance, in the video, it's like drone shot footage that's sort of rolling, coming, over the top of them. And then sort of, you get this like wipe effect where part of the screen turns and changes into the next shot before the rest of it.
Yeah.
So it kind of cuts out this little hole and places in. There's quite a few videos that have done it. Another good example of one is ASAP Rocky Lamborghini High. I'm not sure if anyone's seen that, but it's a very, very crazy clip where they use these masking effects to slide between different transitions. So, for example, one shot might be me playing the drums, and then next to me, all of a sudden, this microphone gets cut out, and then the rest of you gets cut out, and then it transitions the whole shot gradually from me to you. Very clever technique. Again, something that you can learn on YouTube, I presume. But that's more music video blending and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, man, is there any sort of other things that you think might be helpful for people if they're trying to create?
I also go
these
like
sort of things,
like similar to masking technique. I also like blend multiple different files together. So because I don't have the best PC in the world and my graphics card like can barely handle half of these damn textures. Once you like start loading in 4K, 8K textures, like your PC slows down quite a lot, right? So pretty much what I'll do is I'll make multiple separate files to bounce out, and then I blend them all together. And what I do is I make whatever my last frame is, I make that frame one of my next project. So this is just to save on CPU and shit.
Oh,
so,
I see, yeah.
So like when I sent you that one of the orb, and then it blows up into the universe,
yeah,
and then it goes through the universe, and then it pops out as that person's eye.
Yeah.
So pretty much that was 3 different ones I did, but it looked like one shot, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like pretty much I made this universe, you know, grabbed a sphere. I grabbed a texture from textures.com again for free. Someone's just made this sick-ass texture space with like all of these sick, like, it's not even stars. It's like, you know, you see the space, but
Yeah.
it's blue and purple, and it's all these like gas
nebula
and
or
stuff.
something.
Yeah. It's like that. So then I just did all that. Applied that material to the sphere, made the sphere really big, and then I put the camera right in the middle of it, and then I just moved the camera around the scene, and then it looks like you're flying through space.
Yeah, so saving CPU, not having this enormous project in one thing.
Yeah, and then I just made the last frame. Like I grabbed the last frame, and then I took a screenshot. Actually, I didn't take a screenshot. I bounced that out as a PNG instead of an MP4 or MPEG, whatever it is. Like I didn't. I bounced out that last frame as a
still image
PNG, and then I dragged and dropped that still image into a new project, and I applied that still image PNG to the eyeball of this other character that I'd made, and then her eye became that space sphere. So then I started on frame 1, the camera right up on her eye, so you don't know it's a person yet. All you can see is just the same space image as before.
Yeah.
And I made the focal length. Fuck, if anyone who knows if I say any of these things wrong, they're probably like, idiot. Like, I just know how to click buttons. I think it's focal length. It's like
it's the distance on which the focus is in the camera.
Yeah. So I had it really zoomed in, and then I pulled the camera out and I turned it back to like 28 millimeters or whatever it is, off for that, and then pulled it back, and then you were like, oh, it's a person's eye and a face, right? But then when you put them together, it looks like this camera's gone through space, and then it just stops, and it goes, and it pulls out, and then now all of a sudden it's like looking at a whole nother character, as if the universe was within her eye or within her brain kind of thing. It's like this cool little just transitional thing you can do as well. And again, just to answer the other part of the question, it's like, you know, on this channel, what we're trying to do is show people that you don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all of these things and to achieve your craft, right? Sure, if you want to make a hit song and a hit music video, you're going to need probably professional mixing masters. Our songs aren't professional by any means, but our mixing's pretty good considering we do it ourselves, like completely ourselves from start to finish. We have no help whatsoever. We do it all ourselves. And it's not a flex. It's not like, oh, we do it all ourselves. It's just saying that, like,
budget-wise, we want to try and do, and like we are creative as well.
It's creative
so we
for me.
enjoy these kinds of things.
It's like all it is, right? Is like you are a band or a solo artist, whatever you may be. If you have an image in your head and you really, really, really want to achieve that, there is all the information on the internet in the world for free.
Yes, literally
everywhere.
free.
You just got to piece it together and put the time in. And experiment and learn and get in there, and don't be scared about making crap, because you're going to make crap. That's how you get better. Same thing with music, same thing with everything. So just if you want to do all these things, there's free programs that don't cost any money. There's free plugins that don't cost any money. There's trial versions of digital audio workstations that don't cost any money. And you can just be creative and have fun with it, and, you know, take your art seriously, and don't worry about making an end product that needs to impress people. That's not what it's about. You know, if you're in music to impress people, then you probably shouldn't be doing music. You should be doing influencing or some shit. Like just stay true to yourself. Make music that you like, make the theme, and all these things are important to get your point across of what you're trying to create. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's a beautiful way to summarize, bro. I can't add much more to that. I think you did a wonderful job of explaining all of those things. I know it's going in depth where some people might just be like, yo, like, we don't give a shit about visuals. We just want someone like you who's talented enough to do it. Like, we need someone just to help us, and they want to just pump out the music. That's also fine. But if you're, like you say, if you're creative and you want to give it a go, it's not that hard. You are going to make some terrible stuff to begin with, but chip away at it, and eventually you'll get some good stuff coming.
And even if you pay someone else to do it, that's fine too. But it's just good to know that it's possible to do for free if you want to. And if you don't want to do it because you just don't have the time or commitment, and you just want to, at least if you pay somebody else, it is good to do that too, because it's good to have visuals with the music you're making. And that visual doesn't need to be a music video. It can be like a little looping thing. It can be even just a still image, like
that has a little moving element, like a TV screen that's just flickering or something.
Yeah, and it's just whatever it may be, whatever the song is about, it's just the still image represents what that song is, or at least a part of what that song is. So people can be like, oh yeah, cool. Like they can put the visual with the song, then with the lyrics, and it just compiles it all together into like it feels more like a finished product.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very nice, bro. I think we'll wrap it up there. I'll put the link in the show notes for the Polaris video so people can check that out as an example. And then maybe another link if we find some good videos. But yeah, otherwise we'll catch everyone next time on episode 28.
Bye.
Peace.